Greetings, Lancers! The goal of this video is to go over setting up the Lancer system and getting you ready to run a mech combat as the Game Master in Foundry VTT. I'm not going to cover getting Foundry VTT up and running. You may be self-hosting or using a third-party hosting service like The Forge, Molten Hosting, or Foundry Server, so this video assumes you have a Foundry instance configured and you can install systems, modules, and worlds in that Foundry instance. I also assume you have purchased the core rulebook and have a copy of the Lancer NPC data for CompCon, which is an LCP file. This file contains all the NPC information that is in the core rulebook, so you can create NPCs in Foundry. The Lancer system for Foundry 11 is quite new when I am recording this. These instructions assume that you are starting from scratch, but if you are upgrading from Foundry 10, you should take steps to back up your Foundry install before upgrading to 11. Foundry 10 has no built-in backup system like Foundry 11 does. If you're in the middle of hosting an ongoing Lancer campaign, consider staying on Foundry 10 if everything is working well. This is also how I do things. Only in a few cases is there only one way to do a thing, so if you do it another way and it's working, that's awesome. You need to make sure your Foundry VTT server is version 11. Any version 11 Foundry is okay, but the latest is 11.315, and you should probably use that one. Click the Update icon in the upper right in Foundry's main page and see what version you are running. We can see here I'm running version 11 build 315. If you aren't running version 11, you may need to download it from the Foundry page or use the tools in your hosting provider to switch to version 11. In the Game Systems section, you should click Install System and search for Lancer. Click Install and let Foundry install this system. Alright, now we need to create a world. In Foundry, a world is a thing you start and your players will connect to. It contains the scenes, actors, compendiums, and players for your Lancer campaign. On the Game Worlds tab, click Create World, pick the Lancer system, type in a name for the world, and click Create World. This will be your game world. Let's launch our new world and log in as the Game Master. Right away, we have a few dialogues waiting for us. One thing you might see is a Foundry tour that can lead to other tours. If you've never used Foundry before, this might be a good time to walk through several tours and get an overview of Foundry. Once you have completed or dismissed the Foundry tour, there may be a Lancer system dialog that gives you recent change information and a welcome message. You can close this or disable it from popping up. It can be re-enabled in the Lancer settings later if you want to see it again. The next dialog is the one asking if we want to install the core Lancer data. The core Lancer data is compendium data for things like frames, sit reps, skills, talents, and so on. You will need this, so install it. It may take a minute to download and populate the compendiums with information. Next, we need to install the NPC LCP that we purchased along with the core rulebook for Lancer. In the upper right section of the Foundry interface, there is a Compendium tab. Here is where we find the Lancer Compendium Manager. If you have other LCP files from other purchases, or maybe you made your own LCP, you can come here to add, remove, or update them. Let's add the LCP that has NPC information so we can make the NPCs later. Open the manager. We will browse to the LCP file location and then import it. Just a note that updating and rebuilding these compendiums will not affect or change existing actors. Actors are NPC players, mechs, etc. Once you've dragged something out onto an actor, it is as if a copy was made. This also means that if you do update the compendiums from the manager, It will not automatically update any existing actors and their items, etc. This relationship will help you understand where to make custom changes to an NPC, for example. Now we are ready to create NPCs, import player characters from ComCon, and set up a scene. In general, NPCs are usually unlinked actors. Unlinked actors are designed as a template of an actor that can be dragged onto a scene multiple times and track their stats and conditions specific to the token on the scene without updating the actor itself. Boss NPCs that are unique or player-controlled actors are examples of linked actors. Changes to a linked actor's token are reflected and tracked on the actor itself. Typically, I prepare for a mech combat by creating the NPCs that the engagement calls for and creating copies of them on the scene. Let's make an NPC we can use. When we imported the NPC LCP file, the Lancer system created basic NPCs for each class in the pre-made NPCs compendium. Let's open that compendium, find an Assault NPC, and import it. We can right-click the NPC we want and select Import Entry. You can also drag and drop an NPC into your actors list to accomplish the same thing. This Assault NPC is fine to use as is in a combat session, but if you're running a pre-made adventure, you might see something that reads out 1 Veteran Assault with an underslung grenade launcher. Or you might want to outfit the NPC better for the upcoming session or challenge your players with more capable enemies. Let's make this Assault NPC a little more interesting. First, we need an underslung grenade launcher. Let's modify our new Assault NPC to match the template and features suggested by our adventure. We're going to click the 3 dots on the Assault / Striker box and select Edit. All right, I'm going to have to edit this. Let's start over. Let's go back to the Assault. When we imported the NPC, When we imported the NPC LCP file, the Lancer system created basic NPCs for each class in the pre-made NPCs compendium. Let's open that compendium, find an Assault NPC and import it. We can right-click the NPC we want and select Import Entry. You can also drag and drop an NPC into your actors list from the compendium to accomplish the same thing. This Assault NPC is fine to use as is in a combat situation. But if you're running a pre-made adventure, you might see something that reads out 1 Veteran Assault with an underslung grenade launcher. Or you might just want to outfit the NPC better for the upcoming session or challenge your players with more capable enemies. Let's make this Assault NPC a little more interesting. First, we need an underslung grenade launcher. Let's modify our new Assault NPC to match the template and features suggested by our adventure. Click the 3 dots on the Assault / Striker box and select Edit. Not only can you edit the base stats for the class for this specific actor, but you can scroll down to find optional features you can drag onto the actor sheet. We're going to scroll down and find the underslung grenade launcher, then we'll drag and drop that onto the actor sheet to make it available. To add a template, we'll need to open the NPC items compendium. We can expand the NPC template compendium folder and look for the veteran template and drag that onto the NPC actor sheet. Now you have a veteran assault NPC with an underslung grenade launcher ready to go. When we set up a scene, we'll drag some of these out and place them. You should refer to page 280 in the Lancer Core rulebook for more information on how many and what kind of enemies to include for a mech combat. I'm not going to cover CompCon in great detail here, and I assume your players have made pilots in CompCon already. Be sure that your players have synced their pilots in CompCon to the cloud and generated a new share code for you. First, let's create a Foundry player real quick. Just like when we launched the world and picked Game Master to log in, your players will log in with their player name, and this is how we will assign actors for them to control and update on their own. In the Game Settings tab in the upper right, click the User Management button. Here you can add players who will be participating in your game world. Let's add a user named Mitch with no password and a user role of player. Select Save and Return to go back to the general Foundry interface. What I prefer to do is create an actor folder for each player. Players may have a few actors they can reference, and this allows setting their permissions easily and making sure you and they can easily find all their actors. At a minimum, players will have a single pilot and a mech to control, but you may also place actors in here to stand in for deployables, secondary mechs, etc. Let's create a folder called Mitch. In the Actors tab in the upper right, select Create Folder, and let's give it the name Mitch. I'm going to color this folder bright green so you can more easily see it in some later steps, what is in the folder and what is not. On the folder named Mitch, there is a little actor icon with a plus sign. Let's click that to make a placeholder actor in the folder. The name will be overwritten during the import, so we can just call this Mitch, but we need to make sure that the type is pilot. Once created, the new pilot actor sheet will open, and we can start an import. Click on the rm-4://sync tab on the actor sheet. Here you can put a share code in. Once you have the code input, click outside the text field and press the > button to download the pilot and their mechs from CompCon. This will create the pilot and any mechs and deployables in the appropriate folder. Now we can right-click the folder and select Configure Ownership. We're going to change Mitch to the owner and save the permissions. Now Mitch will be the owner of all the things in their folder. You have player mechs that can be placed in a scene now. Select the Scenes tab from the top right and create a new scene. You can name it anything you like. There are options to have a player-facing name that's different from the name you see as the GM, if needed. For now, we're using a normal grid of squares. If you want to use hexes, feel free. I hope to cover some modules at a later date that will go over using hexes specifically, but for now, squares are okay, and Lancer supports both equally well. Let's add a background image. This is basically going to be the map we're playing on. The example map is 2000 by 1300 pixels, and Lancer recommends maps no larger than 40 by 40 spaces. With a default grid size of 100 pixels, this map comes in around 20 by 13 grid spaces. That's reasonable for a medium map. We might want to make the grid a little more visible by making it yellow in color, for example. This is totally up to your preference, and you can fiddle with the grid settings to your liking. Let's also disable token vision and fog exploration in the lighting section of the scene configuration. You may want to really dig into vision settings to automate line of sight, sensors, etc. Maybe I will do a vision-focused video to cover that, but for now, we're going to go with the normal Lancer approach that the entire map is visible to all players. Maybe mechs are visible to some pilots, but the players and the GM all see the whole map, much like a tabletop gaming experience. We're going to be running an extraction sitrep for this example. I encourage you to refer to page 267 in the Lancer core book to learn about sitreps and how they work. They are fundamental components of running mech combat. In short, sitreps provide rules for a mech combat that will communicate how your players can succeed. To that end, we can help show everyone the sitrep zones using Foundry drawing tools. On the left-hand side, we'll select the pencil icon for the drawing tools. We're going to use the square drawing tool to create rectangles for the zones. Start by just drawing a square. Double-click on the newly made square, and let's set this up as an enemy ingress zone. I tend to make these red and label them for everyone to read. We'll set the text label to ingress zone, and then we're going to set the color to red. We'll leave the text opacity at 1 for readability. We're going to set the line stroke color to also be red. But we're going to change the opacity for this to 0.2. We're going to set the fill to type solid, and we're also going to set this to be red. We'll set the fill opacity down to 0.1. Now we can drag the zone into place. We can switch to the select drawing tool, and we're going to use Control-C and Control-V to make copies of this zone and place them. We can also make a copy of the ingress zone and then edit it to replace the settings, and we're going to set up a player deploy extraction zone. Now I tend to make these green because they represent places where the players will start. Set the text color to green. We're going to keep the same opacity for both the lines and the fill, but we are going to change their color. Now we can see that if we put this in place, the text doesn't exactly go the direction we want. So what we're actually going to do is going to reverse the width and height, and then we're going to set it to rotate 90 degrees. Now we can just drag it into place, and this will be our player ingress extraction zone. We need one more zone, which is the objective zone. I tend to make any objective or control zones blue. We'll use the exact same size and layout for the player ingress, but we're going to change the name. And then we're going to set these color to blue across all lines, fill, and text. Again, keeping the opacity similar for uniformity. Feel free to play with the placing and the settings for zones to suit your preferences. Now we can drag out actors onto the map. If you want to have reinforcements ready to join the battle near the ingress zones ahead of time, you can hold down the Alt key and drag assault out near one. And when it does this, it will use the Foundry invisible capability for that token so that players aren't aware of it and can't see it. And we can also place a player mech in the ingress zone. All right, now you're ready to set up your own NPCs, import your players, mechs, and pilots, and create your own scenes. Sure, there's no bells and whistles, but with just Foundry, the Lancer system, and the core rulebook LCP, you can be up and overheating mechs in no time.